talking about fixed and variable mortgages, I think those are two words that people use all the time, but most people don't really understand what the difference between fixed rate and a variable rate mortgage is. Can you talk a little bit about that?
They're both good. I mean, we have low rates in Canada right now. Borrow as much as you can. Like it is. I personally right now am also looking at buying because I feel like the prices are very solid. The interest rates have come down from a year and a half ago quite a bit, 25% lower than they were a year ago. They've come down 1 full percent. But you have an option. Once you get approved for the mortgage, you have choice between variable and fixed. And you qualify exactly the same.
Interesting.
It's a personal choice.
Okay.
A historian on mortgages will tell you variable rate has outperformed fixed rates up to 80-90% of the time.
Wow.
Meaning, if you're willing to ride the variable ups and downs, where you pay a little bit more one year, but a lot less the next year, you will, on average, have a lower rate. But this gives people's hearts palpitations. They don't want to watch the news.
Yes.
Our rate's going up, and then they fix in. If you go variable, you have to ride the ups and downs of the interest rates.
Right. So it's a little more stressful, so to speak.
It's a little more stressful. But if you feel like you are a bit of a gambler or that, history's on your side and you like to be savvy, and that's the way to go. Fixed rates are safer. 90% of Canadians take fixed rates out. Don't feel ashamed to take them, especially right now. Fixed rates and variable rates are so close. We're recommending most people take fixed rates. And our rule of thumb basically is with a mortgage, if you have a 1.5% difference between a fixed rate, so the fixed rate's higher, and a variable rate, the variable rate being lower, 1.5% difference, you probably should take the variable rate. There's a big gap there for the variable rate to ride the wave and still not go above the fixed rate. Now, if that gap, though, is less than 0.5%, so the fixed rate is just a little bit above the variable rate, you may want to fix in and just take all variable rate. And if you're somewhere in between, we actually have mixed mortgages where you can take half variable, half fixed.
Wow.
And you can really, kind of play it both ways. I go through this discussion with every client.
Yeah.
We start talking about what's your risk tolerance. Do you like to watch the news? Do you feel like being savvy?
Right.
Most people just say, I want to buy my home and go back to raising kids or doing whatever I'm doing.
Absolutely.
So you see a lot of people take fixed rates in Canada. We're very conservative. Our bankers are conservative. Our consumers are conservative. Buyers, sellers are conservative.
Yeah.
And they're both the same to qualify for. But the variable traditionally is a very good play.
And people actually do what's the percentage of the mixed mortgages that you were just talking about? Like, what's out of all the mortgages that you do?
That's more of a new mortgage product in the last 10 years.
Okay.
So if I encourage it, maybe 10-15% of people take it.
Okay.
Again, about the same about the take variable, take the mixed.
Right.
But we see a lot of fixed rates.
I was going to say that's the majority of
and
what
right
people
now
do,
that's
right?
the play.
Yeah, exactly.
2020 here early in the year, that's the play. It changes month by month, week by week.
Sure.
So our advice constantly is changing, but right now the rates are low. You can't make much of a mistake.
And so if somebody gets pre-approved, you can lock your rate in for 90 days or
up to 120 days.
There we go.
Yeah, and then you'll see interest rates online that are really low that you can't fix in until you have a live deal.
Yes.
That it's called a quick close special. So you got to be careful online what you see and what reality is.
Yeah.
Some of these really low rates too that you can't get pre-approved for have very high penalties, have terrible privileges built into them, have huge restrictions.
Yeah.
So this is now another education thing that you have to go through with your clients, or I do. I feel I have to, but every broker and banker does it differently.